The radio crackled with static at 3:47 hours. Somewhere in the Hindu Kush Mountains, where shadows held secrets and death whispered through the wind. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Ironside Rodriguez pressed his earpiece deeper, straining to catch the transmission that would either save his SEAL team or condemn them to become another classified footnote in military history. Ghost 6, this is Overwatch. We have eyes on your position. Stand by for air support confirmation. The voice was calm, professional, betraying nothing of the chaos unfolding below where Rodriguez and his seven-man team crouched behind jagged rocks, their night vision goggles painting the world in ethereal green. What they'd discovered in the abandoned compound wasn't supposed to exist. The intelligence had been wrong, catastrophically wrong. Instead of a routine extraction of a high-value target, they'd stumbled into something that made Rodriguez's 15 years of combat experience feel inadequate. The satellite phones, the encrypted hard drives, the maps marked with American cities. It was a nightmare scenario that would keep Pentagon officials awake for months. Ironside, we've got movement on the ridge. Multiple contacts, maybe 30 plus, whispered Staff Sergeant Tommy Ghost Nakamura, his rifle scope trained on the darkness that seemed to breathe with malevolent intent. The ambush had been perfectly orchestrated. Rodriguez's team was pinned down in a natural amphitheater, surrounded by enemies who knew every stone, every shadow, every killing angle. The extraction point lay 2 clicks north, but it might as well have been on Mars. Without air support, they were counting down to their own funeral. Overwatch, Ghost 6. We need that air support now. We're taking heavy fire and Rodriguez's transmission was cut short by the distinctive crack of AK-47s echoing off the canyon walls. Muzzle flashes erupted from 3 different positions, painting deadly constellations against the pre-dawn sky. But something was wrong with the air support confirmation. The delay was too long, the silence too heavy. In Rodriguez's experience, when pilots went quiet, it usually meant someone was either dead or making a decision that would haunt them forever. Then came the sound, a distant rumble that started as a whisper and grew into a roar that seemed to shake the very foundations of the mountains. It wasn't the familiar thunder of an A-10 Warthog or the rhythmic chop of Apache rotors. This was something different, something that made Rodriguez's heart skip a beat as he recognized the unmistakable signature of an F-22 Raptor moving at combat speed. Ghost 6, this is Banshee 1. The voice that crackled through his headset was unexpected, calm, steady, and unmistakably female. I'm your air support today, and I'm coming in hot. The radio static seemed to hold its breath as every SEAL on that ridge realized their salvation had arrived in the most unlikely form. 30,000 feet above the chaos, Major Catalina Banshee Volkov adjusted her grip on the stick of her F-22 Raptor, call sign Banshee 1. The cockpit's blue-green glow reflected off her visor as she studied the tactical display showing 8 American souls trapped in a kill zone that would challenge even the most seasoned pilot. Her hands were steady, her breathing controlled, but behind her professional calm lay a lifetime of proving herself in a world that still questioned whether a woman belonged in a fighter cockpit. Banshee 1, this is Overwatch. Be advised, we have friendlies in close proximity to targets. Extreme precision required. The controller's voice carried the weight of 8 lives hanging in the balance. Catalina had been here before. Not this exact moment, but this feeling of the world narrowing to a single point of absolute responsibility. Her father, Colonel Viktor Volkov, had flown MiGs over Afghanistan in the 1980s. Her grandfather had died in the cockpit of a Yak-9 over Stalingrad. Aviation wasn't just in her blood. It was her blood, flowing through generations of pilots who understood that sometimes the sky demanded everything you had to give. Copy Overwatch. I have visual on the friendlies. Her voice remained level despite the complexity of what lay ahead. The SEAL team was surrounded in a natural bowl with hostiles positioned on 3 ridgelines. Standard protocol called for multiple aircraft, careful coordination, and time they didn't have. Instead, she had one F-22, a full payload, and the kind of impossible situation that separated legends from casualties. Below, she could see the muzzle flashes painting the darkness like deadly fireflies. Her targeting systems painted the hostile positions in red, while the friendly transponders glowed reassuring blue. The margin for error was measured in meters, not miles. 1 degree off target, one miscalculation, and she'd be explaining to 8 families why their loved ones weren't coming home. Ghost 6 Banshee 1. I'm going to need you to mark your exact position with infrared strobes. Keep your heads down and trust me. Her words carried a confidence born of thousands of flight hours and countless simulations, but this was real. This was where theory met the unforgiving mathematics of life and death. Rodriguez's voice crackled back, professional despite the bullets whining overhead. Banshee 1, Ghost 6, strobes are hot. How long until you can engage? Catalina's fingers danced across her weapon systems as she calculated angles, blast radii, and the dozens of variables that would determine whether this became a rescue or a tragedy. Her F-22 carried a full complement of precision munitions, GBU-39 small-diameter bombs that could thread the needle between friendly and hostile positions if deployed by someone with the skill and nerves to make it work. 30 seconds, Ghost 6. When I tell you to move, you move fast and you move north. The night was about to become very bright, very loud, and very decisive. Everything depended on precision measured in heartbeats and faith measured in the steady hands of a pilot most of the world would never know existed. Catalina rolled her F-22 into an attack run that would have made her grandfather proud and her father terrified. The Raptor responded like a living thing, cutting through the thin mountain air with predatory grace. Her HUD displayed the targeting solution, 3 distinct enemy positions arranged in a deadly triangle around the pinned SEAL team. The math was elegant in its complexity. Simultaneous strikes, precision timing, and the kind of flying that existed in the razor-thin space between heroism and catastrophe. Banshee 1, you are cleared hot. Repeat, you are cleared hot. The controller's voice carried the weight of authorization that could never be taken back. She'd been called Banshee not for her voice, but for the way she appeared from nowhere when death was near, arriving with the kind of precise violence that saved lives by taking others. The call sign had started as mockery from male pilots who resented her presence, but she'd worn it down to its essence, a harbinger of doom for America's enemies and salvation for those who needed it most. Her first target was the machine gun nest on the eastern ridge, its muzzle flashes strobing like a deadly beacon. The GBU-39 dropped clean from her weapon's bay, its guidance fins adjusting microscopically as it fell toward its appointment with destiny. Catalina was already banking toward her second target when the first explosion painted the mountainside in orange and white, the sound rolling across the valleys like thunder from an angry god. Jesus Christ, Rodriguez's voice exploded across the radio. That was danger close. You're still breathing, aren't you? Catalina's reply was dry, professional, but inside she felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that came with threading the needle between life and death. Her second bomb was already away, tracking toward the sniper position that had kept the SEALs pinned behind inadequate cover. The explosion lit up the night, revealing the stark geography of violence, rocky outcroppings, sparse vegetation, and the small cluster of heat signatures that represented 8 American warriors who trusted their lives to a pilot they'd never met. The third target was the trickiest, a mortar position tucked into a natural depression that required an almost vertical approach to avoid hitting the friendlies below. Catalina pulled her F-22 into a climb that pressed her deep into her ejection seat, then rolled into a dive that would have challenged the airframe's tolerances if she'd had time to worry about engineering specifications. The targeting computer painted the solution in stark digital clarity, and her finger found the release button with the certainty of long practice and absolute commitment. The third explosion completed her deadly triangle, and suddenly the night fell silent except for the fatting rumble of her engines and the ringing in everyone's ears. Ghost 6 Banshee 1, path to extract is clear, move now. Her words cut through the sudden quiet like a command from heaven itself. The silence that followed Catalina's strikes was profound, broken only by the distant echo of her F-22's engines fatting into the pre-dawn darkness. Below, Rodriguez and his team moved through the aftermath of precision violence, their night vision revealing the surgical nature of the attack. Where moments before had been coordinated enemy positions, now only smoke and scattered debris remained. The path to their extraction point lay open, bought with the kind of flying that would be dissected and analyzed in classified after-action reports for years to come. Banshee 1 Ghost 6, that was impressive. Rodriguez's voice carried a note of professional respect that transcended gender, rank, and the artificial divisions that sometimes plagued military hierarchy. He'd seen enough combat to recognize genuine skill, regardless of who delivered it. Catalina maintained her orbit overhead, her sensors sweeping for additional threats while the SEAL team moved toward safety. Her fuel gauge showed she had maybe 20 minutes before she'd need to head for the tanker, but she'd stay on station until every American boot was clear of hostile territory. That's what the job demanded, and what her personal code required. Just doing my job, Ghost 6. How's your team? Her reply was matter of fact, but she found herself genuinely concerned about 8 men she'd never seen except as thermal signatures on her targeting display. All green thanks to you. We've got wounded, but everyone's mobile. Rodriguez paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried something that might have been wonder. Ma'am, I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've never seen flying like that. Those were textbook danger-close strikes. The compliment meant more than he could know. Catalina had spent her entire career fighting not just enemy aircraft and ground targets, but the persistent assumption that women couldn't handle the pressure of combat aviation. Every mission was both a tactical assignment and a personal proving ground, each successful outcome another small victory in a larger war for acceptance and respect. Copy that, Ghost 6. Nice working with you boys. She banked her Raptor toward the extraction coordinates, maintaining overwatch as the SEALs covered ground with the efficient movement of professionals who'd just been gifted another day above ground. Far below, the 8 men moved through terrain that minutes earlier had been a kill zone, now transformed into merely difficult ground to cover. Rodriguez found himself thinking about the pilot overhead, not her gender, not the politics of women in combat, but simply the extraordinary skill that had saved his team. In the moment when death had seemed certain, salvation had arrived in the form of a voice he'd never heard before, delivering violence with the precision of a surgeon and the timing of a guardian angel. As they reached the extraction point where Marine helicopters waited with rotors turning, Rodriguez keyed his radio one final time. Banshee 1, Ghost 6, we're clear and safe. Thank you. The response was immediate, professional, and somehow personal all at once. Stay safe, Ghost 6. See you on the flip side. By the time the sun crested the mountains, painting the Hindu Kush in shades of gold and crimson, Major Catalina Volkov was already back at Bagram Airfield, climbing down from her F-22's cockpit with the measured movements of someone who just completed another day at the office. An office that happened to be 30,000 feet above one of the world's most dangerous neighborhoods. The ground crew swarmed her aircraft with the efficiency of a NASCAR pit team, checking systems, refueling, and preparing Banshee 1 for whatever mission might come next. Colonel James "Brick" Morrison waited by the debrief trailer, his weathered face impassive as he watched his most skilled pilot complete her post-flight inspection. Morrison had been flying fighters when Catalina was still in elementary school, and he'd seen enough combat to recognize the real deal when it walked past him. What had just happened in the mountains would be analyzed, documented, and filed away in the vast bureaucracy of military intelligence. But he knew the truth that wouldn't make it into the official reports. He just witnessed the kind of flying that separated the merely competent from the genuinely exceptional. "Hell of a thing, Volkov," Morrison said as she approached, pulling off her helmet to reveal dark hair damp with sweat and eyes that still held the focused intensity of recent combat. "Yes, sir. Textbook CAS mission." Her response was typically understated, but Morrison caught the slight satisfaction in her voice. She just saved 8 lives with flying that would have challenged pilots with twice her experience, and she knew it. "Textbook, my ass. That was poetry with ordnance." Morrison's grin took years off his weathered face. "The SEAL Team's commander specifically requested to know who was flying Banshee 1. Seems Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez wants to send a personal thank you." Catalina felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the Afghan sun already beating down on the flight line. Recognition from ground forces was the highest compliment a CAS pilot could receive. It meant the people whose lives depended on your accuracy trusted you to deliver when it mattered most. "How's the team?" she asked, genuine concern evident in her voice. "All 8 made it out, 2 with minor wounds, but everyone's going home." Morrison paused, studying her face. "That's what good flying looks like, Major. That's what makes the difference between mission accomplished and gold star families." The debrief would take 2 hours, dissecting every decision, every angle, every split-second calculation that had turned a potential disaster into a successful rescue. But Morrison already knew what the analysis would show: perfect execution under impossible circumstances, delivered by a pilot who'd refused to let the odds dictate the outcome. As they walked toward the trailer where intelligence officers waited with their clipboards and classified questions, Morrison felt a familiar pride. He'd helped train some of the finest pilots in the Air Force, but Catalina Volkov was something special. A warrior poet who wrote her stories in contrails and punctuated them with precision strikes. The debrief room hummed with the quiet intensity of professionals dissecting life-and-death decisions. Intelligence officers hunched over laptops, their screens glowing with tactical displays that reduced the morning's violence to neat digital representations. Catalina sat across from Major Sarah Chen, the squadron's intelligence officer, methodically walking through each phase of the mission, while a digital recorder captured every word for the archives that would outlive them all. "Talk me through your approach to Target Alpha," Chen said, her stylus hovering over a tablet showing the eastern ridgeline, where the first enemy position had been eliminated. "Standard attack profile, adjusted for terrain masking and friendly proximity," Catalina replied, her voice carrying the clinical precision of someone who'd learned to translate split-second instincts into bureaucratic language. "Calculated blast radius at 40 meters. Friendlies were positioned at 63 meters with adequate cover. Acceptable margins." What she didn't say, what couldn't be captured in official reports, was the moment of pure calculation when mathematics became faith. The instant when she'd committed to the attack run knowing that the difference between success and tragedy was measured in degrees of angle and milliseconds of timing. The bureaucracy wanted numbers. The reality had been about something far more intangible. Chen nodded, making notes with the mechanical efficiency of someone who'd debriefed hundreds of combat missions. "Any issues with target acquisition or weapons release?" "Negative. Systems performed nominal. Target destruction was complete." Again, the clinical language failed to capture the artistry involved. The way she'd felt her F-22 respond to her inputs, the perfect harmony between pilot and machine that transformed technological capability into tactical success. Colonel Morrison watched from the corner, recognizing the gap between what was being documented and what had actually happened. He'd sat through enough debriefs to know that the most important elements of combat flying, the intuition, the split-second decisions, the mysterious alchemy that transformed training into victory, couldn't be reduced to checkbox items and statistical analysis. The SEAL team commander's preliminary report describes your strikes as surgically precise, Chen continued, reading from her screen. Any additional observations about the mission parameters? Catalina paused, considering her words carefully. In the military, understatement was both art form and survival mechanism. The mission was successfully completed within acceptable parameters. No friendly casualties, all targets neutralized, ground forces extracted without incident. But behind her professional calm, she carried the memory of 8 voices on the radio. 8 men whose lives had hung in the balance while she'd calculated angles and blast radii. She remembered the moment when Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez's voice had cracked with relief, the sound of men who'd just been gifted another sunrise by a pilot they'd never met. The debrief concluded with the usual administrative requirements: forms to be signed, reports to be filed, ammunition expenditure to be documented. But as the intelligence officers packed up their equipment and disappeared back into the bureaucratic machinery of military operations, Morrison lingered. "Good work today, Major. The kind that makes a difference." His words were simple, but they carried the weight of decades in the cockpit and the recognition of one warrior acknowledging another. Word of the morning's rescue spread through Bagram Airfield with the speed that only military gossip could achieve. By lunch, every pilot in the squadron had heard some version of the story: how Banshee had pulled off 3 danger-close strikes that saved a SEAL team from annihilation. The details grew with each telling, as war stories inevitably do, but the core truth remained unchanged. Catalina Volkov had accomplished something extraordinary. Captain Mike Joker Sullivan found her in the squadron-ready room, hunched over a laptop reviewing gun camera footage from her mission. Sullivan was old-school Air Force, a 20-year veteran who'd flown A-10s in Iraq and had strong opinions about women in combat aircraft. Those opinions had been shaped by prejudice and tradition rather than experience, but the events of the morning had given him something new to consider. "Heard you had some excitement this morning," Sullivan said, settling into the chair beside her with the careful neutrality of someone navigating unfamiliar emotional terrain. Catalina looked up from her screen, where the silent footage showed her ordnance impacting with the precision of guided lightning. "Just another CAS mission, Joker, nothing special." But Sullivan had been around long enough to recognize false modesty when he heard it. He'd seen the gun camera footage making rounds through the squadron, watched the split-second timing that had saved 8 American lives. The strikes had been executed with the kind of precision that took years to develop and nerves to deploy when it mattered most. "Look, Banshee," Sullivan paused, choosing his words carefully, "I haven't always been supportive of women in combat roles." The admission came hard, each word a small surrender of long-held beliefs. "But what you did this morning, that was world-class flying. Those SEALs are going home to their families because you know your business." The acknowledgement meant more than he could know. Catalina had endured years of sideways glances, whispered conversations that stopped when she entered a room, and the constant pressure of knowing that every mission was being evaluated not just on its own merits, but as evidence for or against women's place in combat aviation. Sullivan's words represented something precious and rare: respect earned through demonstrated competence. "Thanks, Joker. That means something coming from you." Her reply was simple, but it carried the weight of professional recognition finally received. "Those SEAL boys are telling everyone who'll listen about the pilot who saved their asses. Turns out they don't much care what gender their air support is, long as it shows up when needed." Sullivan's grin held a touch of embarrassment at his own previous attitudes. Maybe us old dogs can learn new tricks after all. As Sullivan left the ready room, Catalina returned to her analysis of the morning's mission, but something had shifted. The footage on her screen showed the same precise strikes, but now they represented more than just successful target engagement. They were evidence of barriers beginning to crumble, one perfectly placed bomb at a time. The evening found Catalina alone on the flight line, conducting the ritual inspection that marked the end of another day in a career built on the marriage of technology and violence. Her F-22 sat silent and deadly in its hardened shelter, its angular surfaces designed to defeat enemy radar while housing the most sophisticated weapons systems ever created. In the fading light, it looked less like a machine and more like a sleeping predator, waiting for the next call to action. Chief Master Sergeant Wrench Rodriguez, no relation to the SEAL team leader, emerged from the maintenance bay with his usual complement of grease stains and technical updates. Rodriguez had been maintaining fighters since before Catalina was born, and his opinion of pilots was generally inversely related to how much damage they inflicted on his carefully maintained aircraft. "Your bird's ready for whatever comes next, Major," Rodriguez reported, his tone carrying the professional satisfaction of someone who took personal pride in mechanical perfection. "Clean bill of health, all systems nominal. Whatever you did up there this morning, you brought her back without a scratch." Catalina ran her hand along her aircraft's wing, feeling the subtle vibration that indicated perfectly balanced control surfaces. The F-22 had performed flawlessly during the morning's mission, responding to her inputs with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. The bond between pilot and aircraft was something civilian engineers never fully understood. It went beyond mechanical specifications into the realm of trust, where split-second decisions were made possible by absolute faith in the machine's capabilities. "She's a good bird, Chief. Takes care of me, I take care of her." The relationship was symbiotic, each dependent on the other for survival in an environment that tolerated no mechanical failures or pilot errors. Rodriguez nodded with the satisfaction of someone who'd spent decades ensuring that trust was justified. "Word is you put on quite a show this morning. Danger-close strikes that saved a SEAL team." His voice carried the respect that maintenance crews reserved for pilots who brought their aircraft home safely while accomplishing impossible missions. "Just doing the job, Chief. Your bird made it possible." Catalina's response reflected the unspoken partnership between pilot and ground crew. She provided the skill and decision-making, while Rodriguez and his team provided the mechanical reliability that made precision strikes possible. As darkness settled over Bagram Airfield, broken only by the harsh glare of security lights and the distant glow of Kabul's sprawling urban landscape, Catalina felt the familiar weight of responsibility that came with flying the most advanced fighter aircraft in the world. Tomorrow would bring another mission, another opportunity to prove that excellence transcended gender, nationality, and the artificial barriers that humans constructed between themselves and their capabilities. Her secure phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Colonel Morrison. "Pentagon wants a full brief on this morning's mission. Seems your flying caught some attention at the highest levels. Well done, Major." Recognition from the Pentagon was both honor and burden. It meant her actions were being studied, analyzed, and potentially used as evidence in the ongoing debate about women in combat roles. But tonight, she chose to focus on the simpler truth. 8 Americans were alive because she'd done her job with precision and skill. 3 days after the rescue in the Hindu Kush, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez sat in a secure briefing room at Naval Special Warfare Command in Coronado, California, surrounded by the kind of senior officers whose careers were built on understanding the precise application of violence in defense of American interests. The after-action report lay open on the conference table, its pages dense with tactical analysis and operational assessments, but Rodriguez knew the real story couldn't be captured in military bureaucracy. "Walk us through the air support phase," requested Rear Admiral Patricia Hayes, her 2 stars reflecting the harsh fluorescent lighting as she leaned forward with the intensity of someone who'd spent decades managing the lives and deaths of America's most elite warriors. Hayes had commanded SEAL teams herself, back when women weren't officially allowed in combat roles, and she understood the complexities of gender integration in special operations. Rodriguez pulled up the tactical display on his tablet, showing the ridge lines and enemy positions that had nearly become his team's graveyard. "Ma'am, we were surrounded with no viable exit strategy when Banshee 1 arrived on station. Single F-22, full payload, pilot designation Major Catalina Volkov." He paused, choosing his words carefully. In the special operations community, praise was earned through competence, not politics, and his assessment would carry weight in circles where reputation was currency and accuracy was survival. The strikes were perfect. 3 separate targets, danger-close parameters, executed with precision I've never seen before. My team was 63 meters from the nearest impact, and the pilot put ordnance exactly where it needed to go. No collateral damage, no friendly fire incidents, complete target neutralization. Admiral Hayes made notes with the careful attention of someone who understood that combat aviation was both art and science, requiring technical skill and tactical judgment in equal measure. The political implications of a female pilot executing a perfect combat rescue weren't lost on her, but they were secondary to the operational reality of 8 SEALs coming home alive. "What's your assessment of Major Volkov's performance?" Hayes asked, her question carrying layers of meaning that extended beyond simple mission effectiveness. Rodriguez had spent the flight from Afghanistan thinking about his answer to exactly this question. His response would influence training protocols, assignment decisions, and the ongoing evolution of women's roles in combat aviation. But ultimately, his obligation was to truth, regardless of its political implications. "Ma'am, in 15 years of special operations, I've worked with dozens of CAS pilots. Major Volkov ranks among the finest I've encountered. Her flying saved 8 lives through skill, precision, and nerves that would challenge pilots with twice her experience. Gender was irrelevant, competence was everything." The room fell silent as senior officers processed the implications of Rodriguez's assessment. These were men and women who'd spent careers managing the intersection of military capability and political reality, and they understood that combat effectiveness would ultimately determine the success or failure of gender integration in elite units. Admiral Hayes closed the file and looked directly at Rodriguez. "Commander, your recommendation regarding Major Volkov's suitability for close air support missions." "Unrestricted approval, ma'am. Anytime, anywhere, any conditions. My team would fly with her again without hesitation." That evening, Major Catalina Volkov received an encrypted message on her secure communication device while reviewing intelligence reports for the following day's mission. The sender was listed as NSWCOPS, and the content was brief but significant. "Major Volkov, this is LTCDR Rodriguez, Ghost 6. My team and I want to express our gratitude for your exceptional performance during our recent operation. Your flying exemplified the highest standards of military aviation. Respectfully, Marcus Rodriguez, SEAL Team 6. She read the message twice, feeling a warmth that transcended professional satisfaction. Recognition from ground forces represented the ultimate validation for a close air support pilot, confirmation that when lives hung in the balance, her skills had made the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. But more than personal validation, Rodriguez's message represented something larger: the slow dissolution of barriers that had nothing to do with capability and everything to do with outdated assumptions about who could deliver precision violence in defense of American interests. His team's acceptance hadn't been granted because of politics or policies, but earned through demonstrated competence when competence was the only thing that mattered. Catalina saved the message and returned to her mission planning, but something fundamental had shifted. She was no longer just a female pilot in a male-dominated field. She was simply a pilot, judged by the standards that had always mattered most: the ability to complete the mission and bring everyone home alive. Outside her quarters, The Afghan night hummed with the constant activity of a forward operating base that never truly slept. But for the first time in years, Catalina felt the quiet satisfaction of belonging exactly where she was, doing exactly what she was meant to do. The story of the rescue in the Hindu Kush had taken on a life of its own, spreading through military networks with the persistence of legends that captured something essential about courage, competence, and the evolution of America's warrior culture. Fighter squadrons from Nevada to North Carolina discussed the tactical implications of the strikes, while special operations units analyzed the coordination between air and ground forces that had transformed certain disaster into textbook success. At the Pentagon, in the sterile conference rooms where military policy was crafted and careers were shaped, senior officers grappled with the broader implications of Major Volkov's performance. The successful rescue had provided concrete evidence for arguments that had previously been theoretical, demonstrating that combat effectiveness transcended traditional gender roles when missions demanded the best America could field. General Patricia Iron Eagle Morrison, Colonel Morrison's sister, and the highest-ranking female officer in Air Combat Command, stood before a classified briefing board displaying gun camera footage from Catalina's strikes. The assembled officers represented the Air Force's senior leadership, men and women whose decisions would shape military aviation for decades to come. "Gentlemen, ladies, what you're seeing represents the future of American air power," Morrison stated, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd fought similar battles throughout her own career. Major Volkov's performance demonstrates that when we focus on competence rather than demographics, we get results that save American lives and advance American interests. The footage rolled silently, showing the precise impact of 3 GBU-39 bombs that had eliminated enemy positions while preserving friendly forces with surgical accuracy. The mathematics of the strikes were elegant in their simplicity: perfect angles, optimal timing, flawless execution under conditions that would challenge the most experienced pilots. The SEAL Team's commander has provided the highest possible recommendation for Major Volkov's continued assignment to close air support missions, Morrison continued, reading from the classified after-action report. Quote, "Unrestricted approval, anytime, anywhere, any conditions. My team would fly with her again without hesitation." End quote. Around the conference table, senior officers nodded with the understanding of professionals who'd spent careers evaluating combat effectiveness. The political dimensions of women in combat roles remained complex, but the operational reality was becoming increasingly clear. Competence trumped convention when American lives were at stake. Air Force Chief of Staff General Robert Hammer Thompson, a 40-year veteran whose career spanned multiple conflicts, leaned back in his chair with the satisfied expression of someone witnessing institutional evolution. "General Morrison, what's Major Volkov's current assignment status?" "Sir, she's completing her deployment at Bagram with distinction. Squadron Commander rates her among his top 3 CAS pilots regardless of experience level. Request permission to fast-track her for advanced training and leadership positions." Thompson nodded slowly, understanding that Catalina's success represented more than individual achievement. It was evidence of the military's ability to adapt and evolve, incorporating the best talent regardless of traditional barriers. "Approved. Let's see what else she can do when we give her bigger challenges." The decision would resonate far beyond that classified briefing room, influencing training programs, assignment policies, and the careers of countless female pilots who would follow in Catalina's contrail. But in the moment, it was simply a recognition of what combat had already proven. Excellence knew no gender, only results. 6 months after the rescue in the Hindu Kush, Major Catalina Volkov found herself at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, participating in Red Flag, the military's most challenging and realistic combat training exercise. The desert around Las Vegas had been transformed into a simulated battlefield, where America's finest pilots tested their skills against threats designed to replicate the most dangerous scenarios they might encounter in actual combat. Her F-22 bore the scars of intensive training, scuff marks on the canopy from countless sorties, worn patches on the wing surfaces where maintenance crews had accessed internal systems, and the subtle patina that marked aircraft pushed to their operational limits. But Banshee 1 remained as deadly as ever, its systems honed to perfection by months of combat and training. Colonel Jake Viper Harrison commanded the Red Flag exercise, his weathered face bearing the marks of decades in high-performance aircraft. Harrison had flown F-16s over Iraq, F-15s over Afghanistan, and knew that Red Flag separated competent pilots from exceptional ones through scenarios that tested every aspect of tactical aviation. He'd been watching Catalina's performance throughout the exercise with the critical eye of someone who'd seen promising pilots fail under pressure. Banshee 1, this is Red Flag Control. You're cleared to engage multiple targets in Sector 7. Be advised, you'll be operating in a high-threat environment with minimal support. Harrison's voice carried the calm professionalism that marked serious training, where mistakes had consequences that extended beyond grades or evaluations. The scenario was diabolical in its complexity. Catalina would face multiple surface-to-air missile sites, enemy fighters, and electronic jamming while attempting to provide close air support to a surrounded ground unit. It was designed to overwhelm pilots through sheer complexity, forcing them to prioritize, adapt, and make split-second decisions under crushing pressure. Red Flag Control Banshee 1 copies, proceeding to engage. Her response was steady, betraying none of the adrenaline that always accompanied high-stakes flying. The F-22 responded to her inputs like a living thing, climbing toward the threat environment where her skills would be tested against some of the most challenging scenarios military planners could devise. What followed was 27 minutes of tactical flying that would be analyzed by instructors for years to come. Catalina threaded through missile engagement zones with the precision of a surgeon, eliminated multiple ground targets while evading enemy fighters, and delivered close air support that rescued the simulated ground unit with textbook efficiency. When she finally landed and shut down her engines, the flight line was crowded with instructors, fellow pilots, and ground crew who'd monitored her performance through advanced tracking systems that recorded every maneuver, every decision, every aspect of her tactical execution. Colonel Harrison approached her aircraft as she completed her post-flight inspection, his expression unreadable in the harsh Nevada sunlight. Major Volkov, that was either the finest Red Flag performance I've witnessed in 20 years of running these exercises, or you got lucky in ways that defy statistical analysis. Catalina's response was characteristically understated. Just flying the mission, sir. The aircraft performed flawlessly. But Harrison knew better. He'd seen the data, analyzed the tactical solutions, and recognized flying that transcended technical proficiency to become something approaching artistry. Major, how would you feel about an assignment to the weapons school? The offer represented the pinnacle of fighter-pilot achievement, an opportunity to train the instructors who would teach the next generation.